Over the years, many people have argued if Five Nights at Freddy's should have ended at some point, and if so, when was the time that made the most sense to do so? Looking back to the current state of FNaF, yeah, this series should have been long gone by now.
He got too much juice.
But one massive element that changes with the release of every new piece of media related to the FNaF franchise is its legacy. The current legacy that the FNaF franchise left on the world is a revolutionary new way to create horror games that play with your lack of information and ways to defend yourself, causing a lack of information which causes sheer blind panic. It is also remembered as a series which went on for much longer than it should have, which resulted in a massive dip in quality and FNaF security breach. But I'ma try to answer if FNaF really needed to end, and if so, what was the time that was most convenient to do so? If you liked the video, then drop a like in the like box and subscribe to the subscribe button. I've bought a new mic, but I didn't have the chance to set it up, so probably in the next video there should be a spike in quality with my audio. Once again, any criticism is welcome. Anyways, back to twerking Freddy.
I put a whole bag of jelly beans up my ass.
So, do I even think that FNaF should continue as a franchise? Well, most people would immediately say no, but I think it's not as simple as that. It's easy to comment how FNaF should have ended after a certain game or event, only in retrospect after seeing the negative impact that something caused to the franchise, but I'm also gonna take into consideration the logic of ending the series at that time. Also, I'm not gonna talk about why the FNaF franchise still keeps chugging along. That horse has been beaten to a bloody pulp. It's because of the money. There, you happy? Great. Now let me talk about what I fucking came here for. I can understand why FNaF continued on after the originally intended trilogy. It's no secret that Cawthon wasn't all that pleased with FNaF 3, which was very debatable. I think it was a satisfying conclusion. Watch this video, I explain myself there. But I have zero fucking clue why Bro thought it was a good idea to introduce an entirely new location and massively expand the lore in the franchise's 5th goddamn installment, but sure. At least it's a good game which is viewed favorably by the fans. Oh, for fuck's sake. My point being that most of the games that were made after the initial plan for the series never hit that home run quite like the first 3 games. Sure, there were exceptions, but that is exactly what they were. Exceptions. And that's not to even mention how they fucked up the story. Oh, sorry, forgot my title card. The story is a fucking mess at this point. I stopped using my brain cells to understand the story after Pizzeria Simulator came out.
Connection terminated. I'm sorry.
And even before then, I'd stopped actively caring for it because of how convoluted it is. You see, the original story is actually quite simple. A guy killed a bunch of children in various times and locations. The spirits of those kids are now restless and inhabit the animatronics and are aggressive to anyone who appears to be remotely similar to their killer. Specifically, anyone that appears as the same type of security guard. And in the finale, the children get their revenge, serving their killer a bit of his own medicine. He's killed again in a fire, and that's it. Yes, I know that in the final newspaper in FNaF 3, Springtrap is in the background, but I've always seen it as Springtrap's body being visible as a symbol of his final demise. And there you have it. Clean, concise, beautiful. Granted, it has some loose ends at the time, but frankly, I don't give a single fuck about loose ends. They enrich the story to a special amount that stories where everything is laid out are just, quite frankly, boring as balls.
Bollocks.
Simple and effective storytelling mixed in with a few oddballs to get MatPat's brain working, and what more could you ask for? We had the perfect trilogy, why did Skunt fuck it up so badly? Clearly, I personally think that the franchise should have ended by now. I think it would be somewhat of an internet classic at this point. But now I gotta answer the other question of the video. When do I think I would have tied the bow and said farewell to this conceptually flawless franchise? Title card again. When do I think the franchise should have ended? Well, let's get the obvious out of the way. Definitely before security breach. I would also say before Scott had incident, which resulted in an unfavorable reputation for Scott. So definitely not then. Special delivery is just a soulless cash grab, and even though I think the concept of FNaF VR is cool, and is exactly what the fans have been asking for since the first game,
This would be like terrifying if you controlled the cameras with like an Oculus Rift or something.
that also feels like it was made just to meet a deadline rather than to appease the fans. Not the fault of the game at all. Although I would make one key change to the game. Ditch all the story pieces, you don't need them. You could argue the same for Ultimate Custom Night, but I'll get to that in a minute. Just make this game about remastering the few first old games plus the additional few minigames, and that's it. No glitch trap bullshit, no game tester gets mind controlled by a killer bunny gobbledygook, just pure gameplay and that's it. Or you could do something like Ultimate Custom Night, where you make something so goofy that is hilarious, or some teeny tiny bits of lore that spark a slight bit of interest. I think though that these 2 games should have been made with the sole purpose as one-off fun games that the community had been asking for years. I like FNaF Pizzeria Simulator, and its ending is one of the greatest pieces of video game media ever, but did we really need this game from a story standpoint? I mean, I get that this game served to try and tie up the story once again, but if some more competent lore handling happened, we wouldn't even have this mess to fix in the first place. I will admit that the Tycoon part of the game is really fun, and I honestly think that that should have been a spin-off game as well. Yes, I know that was originally the plan, but I can't remember why Scott decided not to go through with it. FNaF sister location doesn't really need to exist. It doesn't really answer any of the questions FNaF 4 left unanswered, but instead it just makes the already complex and thought out story even more complicated. I mean, for fuck's sakes, even Scott at this point keeps losing track of what happened, when, and which events contradict others. He already had to retcon some stuff and is already contradictory when it comes to the evidence and what is written in the FNaF guidebook thingy. Look dude, make up your goddamn mind! Don't you see that this series is fucked? Get that shit out of here. The video I made about that game explained that the game itself isn't as bad as people make it out to be, but my biggest gripe with it is that it exists in the first place, which really leaves us with the final decision. Since the first 3 FNaF games were designed from the start, did the series need FNaF 4 to finish its story? And my final answer to that is yes. FNaF 4 was necessary to finish the story. Let me explain. So Scott, and frankly the majority of the FNaF franchise, wasn't all that satisfied with FNaF 3 regardless of its story, specifically the gameplay. So Scott had to extend the story a little bit in order to design a game he would be happy with. And I think he did a really great job. He didn't have the absolute masterclass endings like FNaF 3 or Pizzeria Simulator, but it was satisfying enough that most people accepted it as the end of the story. It basically did the same thing as FNaF 3, answered a lot of questions people had from before, while also adding some red herrings and loose ends to enrich the story. Dream Theory is probably my most favorite FNaF story ever because it ties in all the games nicely while also explaining that some loose ends don't really need to be answered because, frankly, they don't matter. It's a dream. Some stuff happens in dreams without explanation, so to intentionally leave some stuff unanswered by Scott would have been perfect. And that about does it. If Scott ended the FNaF franchise there, he would have been known as an absolute unit who made one of the greatest runs of games ever. The franchise wouldn't have taken a nosedive to be catered to kids primarily, and would be beloved still to this day by much more people. This series would be an even better example of excellent storytelling through the medium of video games than it is today, and most importantly by far, security breach wouldn't have happened.